Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about something pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah.
And that is the terms
Amazigh.
and Berber
Ooh.
and why it's important to use the correct term. And you might be surprised to even learn the correct way to pronounce Amazigh.
Yeah, definitely a topic that deserves, a proper deep dive because it gets at how language is really intertwined with identity, and power dynamics, and even prejudice sometimes.
Right. And we actually have a YouTube clip from a pronunciation expert, Shulene Mikkel, who is going to tell us how to properly pronounce this, and then we'll be unpacking a really insightful article that delves into the history and significance of these terms.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's start with that pronunciation then. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous to find out I've been saying it wrong this whole time. Let's hear from Julian Mikkel.
Okay.
Amazigh.
Wow. Wow. That's beautiful. I have to say, hearing it pronounced correctly makes a huge difference.
Yes.
It feels much more respectful. It does, yeah. And it makes you realize how important it is to actually take the time to learn how to pronounce things correctly, especially when it comes to different cultures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we know how to say Amazigh correctly, let's dig into what this term actually means and where it comes from.
Well, the Amazigh in the Tamazight language means free man
Oh.
or free people, and it's a statement of self-identification for the indigenous people of North Africa.
Oh, wow. Free man. That's such a strong and evocative meaning. It already kind of hints at a history of resistance and self-determination. But then where does the term Berber fit into all of this? I feel like that's the term I've always heard.
Right, and that's because Berber has been the dominant term that we've used for centuries, but it's not a term that the Amazigh people chose for themselves. It actually comes from the Greek word barbaroi and later the Arabic word barbari.
Wait, barbaroi like barbarian.
Exactly.
That's not a very flattering term.
No, it's not. And both terms essentially meant unintelligible or foreign, and they were used to denote people who didn't speak Greek or Arabic.
So from the very beginning, this term was used to label and other Amazigh people by outsiders.
Unfortunately, yes. And that usage, with all of its negative connotations, continued through Arab conquests and European colonization. Berber became a label imposed by those in power rather than a term of self-identification.
It's a reminder of how language can be used as a tool of oppression to kind of devalue and marginalize entire groups of people.
Absolutely. So choosing to use the Amazigh is about much more than just being politically correct. It's about recognizing and respecting a people's right to define themselves on their own terms.
That makes perfect sense. So if Amazigh is the preferred term, how widely recognized is it today? Is it mainly used within the Amazigh community, or is it gaining broader acceptance?
It's definitely gaining global recognition. We're having this conversation about the importance of using Amazigh. And their article highlights how there are translations for the Amazigh in numerous languages: Arabic, English, French, Spanish. So that shows a growing awareness and acceptance of this term as the appropriate way to refer to the people and their culture.
That's encouraging to hear. But I'm curious, the article mentions a region called Amazigh. Can you tell us more about what that is and its significance to the Amazigh people?
Sure. Amazigh is a term that refers to the entire region of North Africa inhabited by the Amazigh, the Amazigh people. It stretches all the way from the Canary Islands to the Siwa Oasis in Egypt.
Wow. That's a huge area. I had no idea. So it's not just a specific country. It's a vast cultural region with its own unique history and identity.
Exactly. And recognizing Amazigh as a distinct region challenges the traditional boundaries and narratives that have often excluded or marginalized the Amazigh people.
It's a powerful way of reclaiming their space in history. It sounds like understanding the concept of Amazigh is crucial to understanding the full scope of Amazigh culture and identity.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity and richness to our understanding. It reminds us that identity is often tied to place and shared history, and it highlights the deep connection the Amazigh people have to their land and cultural heritage.
That's a great point. It seems like there's so much more to the story than just two different terms. We're talking about an entire cultural region with its own unique history, language, and worldview.
Exactly. And this is just the beginning of our deep dive.
Oh.
We've only just scratched the surface of the fascinating world of the Amazigh people.
This has already been so insightful. We've gone from a pronunciation lesson to a much deeper understanding of the Amazigh people and their connection to their land. But there's still so much more to uncover, right?
Absolutely. There's a whole world of culture, history, and current events related to the Amazigh people that we haven't even touched on yet.
Well, I'm definitely hooked. I can't wait to learn more.
Awesome. We'll be back in part 2 to explore even more about the fascinating culture, language, and contemporary struggles of the Amazigh, so stay tuned.
Welcome back. I'm still reeling from that pronunciation revelation in part 1. It's amazing how a single word can hold so much history and cultural significance.
It really is. And it goes to show that, language is never just about words.
Right.
It's about how we perceive and interact with the world.
Absolutely. In part 1, we talked about how the term Berber carries a lot of historical baggage and why it's so important to use Amazigh instead. But I'm curious, how do people react if you, accidentally use Berber? Is it something that immediately causes offense?
That's a great question, and it's one that the article addresses directly.
Oh.
The author suggests that for many Amazigh people, Berber is a non-starter.
Oh.
It's a term that's just loaded with negative connotations. I mean, imagine being constantly referred to by a name that essentially means barbarian.
Right.
It's dehumanizing, and it's dismissive of an entire culture's identity.
That makes sense. It's like using a racial slur even if you don't intend any harm.
Exactly.
The impact is still hurtful.
It's about being sensitive and respectful and recognizing that this word, even if it's commonly used, carries a lot of weight for the Amazigh people.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that what might seem like a small slip of the tongue can actually perpetuate harmful stereotypes and historical injustices.
So it's always best to err on the side of caution and use Amazigh people. But what about in academic settings? I remember hearing about something called Berber studies.
Right.
Is that term still being used even with this push for more respectful language?
That's a great point. You've hit on something really interesting here. The author actually argues that even in academia, where Berber has long been the standard term, we should be moving toward Amazigh studies.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a big shift.
Yeah.
It shows how deeply ingrained these terms can be, even in spaces dedicated to understanding and representing cultures accurately.
It is, yeah. But it's a reminder that progress takes time and effort, even within institutions that, pride themselves on being progressive. But the conversation is happening, and that's a positive step.
This deep dive is really making me think about the power of language and how we use it. It's not just about being politically correct, it's about being accurate and respectful and conscious of the impact that our words can have.
Yeah, I completely agree. Language is a really powerful tool, and it's our responsibility to use it thoughtfully and with awareness of its potential to harm or uplift.
The author makes another interesting point that really resonated with me, and that is that just because a word is commonly used doesn't mean it's free of bias or harmful connotations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I think we all need to be more mindful of. Makes me wonder about other terms we use so casually that might actually be problematic.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that we should always be questioning our assumptions and critically examining the language that we use. Where did this term come from? Who gets to define it? And whose voices are being silenced or marginalized by its continued use?
We need to do our own mini deep dives on a regular basis to ensure that we're being thoughtful and respectful in our communication.
Totally, yeah. This conversation about Amazigh versus Berber is a perfect example of how taking a closer look at language can reveal so much about history, culture, and power dynamics. It challenges us to be more aware and intentional in the words that we choose.
So beyond being mindful of our language, are there other ways that we can show solidarity with the Amazigh people and their fight for recognition?
Sure.
How can we move beyond just knowing the right words and take meaningful action?
That's a really important question, and I think there are definitely things that we can do to be better allies. Supporting organizations that advocate for the Amazigh rights, learning about their rich culture and history, and amplifying their voices are all tangible ways to contribute to their struggle for recognition and self-determination.
It's about taking that knowledge we've gained and turning it into action.
Absolutely. It's about actively contributing to a more inclusive and respectful world where everyone's identity is valued and celebrated.
This conversation has been incredibly eye-opening. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on language and its power. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway from this deep dive?
For me, the most powerful message is that this is just the beginning. There's always more to learn. There's more ways to be an ally, and there's always more to unpack about the complexities of language and identity. We should never stop questioning and learning and challenging our own assumptions.
It's incredible how this deep dive started with just a simple pronunciation question and has led us to such a profound understanding of the complexities of language, identity, and power.
It's a testament to how interconnected these issues are. Like, language isn't just a neutral tool for communication. It reflects our values and our history and the way that we see the world.
The article that we've been discussing ends with a really powerful question, and I think it kind of perfectly captures the essence of what we've been talking about. The author asks, what are other common names of ethnic groups we are continuing to employ, of which we have not carefully considered the implications?
Yeah, that's a good one. It challenges us to go beyond just accepting the language we've inherited and to critically examine whether it aligns with our values of inclusivity and respect.
It makes you realize that we all have a responsibility to be more conscious and informed about the language we use, especially when it comes to describing people and cultures different from our own.
Absolutely. We have a responsibility to educate ourselves and to listen to the voices of those who have been marginalized and to make conscious choices about the language we use. Even if we don't intend any harm, our words can perpetuate harmful stereotypes and historical injustices.
This deep dive has highlighted the importance of being lifelong learners.
Right.
Not just in terms of acquiring knowledge, but also in terms of unlearning biases and assumptions that we might not even realize that we have.
It's an ongoing process of self-reflection and growth, and it's a journey we should all be on together.
Well said. I think that's the perfect note to end on. This deep dive into Amazigh people identity has been eye-opening and thought-provoking and ultimately empowering.
Yeah.
It's given us the knowledge and the tools to be more conscious and respectful in our use of language, not just in relation to Amazigh people, but in all of our interactions.
I hope our listeners will feel inspired to continue exploring these issues, questioning their own assumptions, and engaging in thoughtful dialogue about the power of language and its impact on the world around us.
It's been a truly insightful journey. So until next time, keep those ears open, those minds curious, and those voices respectful.